Now back to the program on tapdetroit.com.
All right, well, while we were off last week, I say this story went semi-viral locally. You probably saw it across your news feed from Jalopnik, Detroit.jalopnik.com. The difference between Detroit and Metro Detroit, an explainer by Aaron Foley. And this all seemed to come about over an inaccuracy that was reported by Gawker.com. And to explain it in his own words from Detroit.jalopnik.com, we have Aaron Foley on the line. Aaron, thanks for taking some time with us. I know you're down at Movement right now, and I'm sure it's hard to break away to do 10 to 15 minutes while what do they have? They have those silent discos, I read your piece, where it's completely silent and people put headphones on and only they can hear it.
Yeah, it's so weird. You put on the headphones and the DJ is still at the DJ booth, but you still hear the music through the headphones and you dance that way. So it was strange. I tried it for a little while, and yeah, that's what it was.
All right, now
it's like your own bubble of noise.
Right, it's like a secret for everyone on the dance floor.
What's the secret for everyone?
No, I said it's like a secret for everyone on the dance floor. All right, now to your piece about the difference between Detroit Metro and Detroit, an explainer. This all started with I don't want to say it was a debate, but the Gawker posting something inaccurate and you trying to correct it. Take us through that.
Yeah, so I don't know if you saw the Pontiac Silverdome.
Tragic.
Inside the Pontiac Silverdome, it's falling apart. It's completely vacant and whatnot. There are a bunch of photos from that, and there's a video of that going around. So Gawker did a post about the Silverdome falling apart, so they called it the Detroit Silverdome. And you don't even have to be from Detroit to know that it's not called the Detroit Silverdome.
Right. Football
fans know it's the Pontiac Silverdome, especially all of us here in Michigan, in the Midwest. No, it's called the Pontiac Silverdome. So I called them out on it. And a lot of people in the comments of both of those stories were like, well, Pontiac is in Metro Detroit, therefore whatever happens in Detroit happens in the metro area. I don't see why people are making such a big deal of this. And I decided to do the explainer post because it is a big deal. Whatever happens in Detroit does not necessarily affect the financial, municipal, political, whatever kind of decisions in a different city. And it's like that in every metro area, but I think the divide is especially prominent here in Metro Detroit. So that's how I did it.
Well, and I think it's really good that you pointed that out because I've had friends come in from out of town before, and one thing I always like to do is I like to drive along the border of the city so people can see the transformation. And I think, it's really funny because especially if you go on the east side on Outer Alter and you see the separation between the Grosse Points and then Detroit, it's so drastic, and that really shows how different the city is from the metro area, and people, I think, don't realize how nice the metro area can be from Detroit.
Exactly. I mean, a couple of people in the comments were saying things like, isn't Michigan all like this? Isn't every city bankrupt? Doesn't every city look like this? And it's definitely, it can be further from the truth, especially if the difference between Grosse Pointe and Detroit. You're riding around the east side of Detroit. It's a lot of small houses, a lot of burnt out areas. You go to Grosse Pointe, and saw huge mansions on lakefront in the riverfront. There's so much diversity to Metro Detroit that it needed explaining to people who are not from here.
Aaron, wherever you are, just stand completely still because you're cutting in and out a little bit, but it sounds good right now. Now, one of the big pieces of debate within your piece is whether people from the area say they're from Detroit or they say where they're from. And I think I cracked the code. The way I've always seen it, if you're talking to somebody from out of state or out of the area and they ask where you are, you say you're from Detroit or the Detroit area. But if you're talking to a local, you say exactly where you're from. You're out in Ferndale and you're meeting someone. Where do you live? I live in Southgate. I live in Madison Heights. Do you find that to be the case?
Absolutely. And, I still find it to be the case, even if they're visiting from out of state. I think some people, when they say where they're from, they expect people to know, like, exactly where that is on the map. I think it is more so the case, like, if you're local or in somewhere in the state, you say exactly where you're from, but, it still pops up from time to time as far as, if you're going out of town and you say you're maybe from Auburn Hills. I mean, maybe some people recognize that as being the home of Chrysler or the Palace of Auburn Hills or something like that. Or maybe some people that might say they're from Dearborn. People might recognize that from Ford or something like that. So, I mean, it's a mixed bag, but it's always been my experience that people, regardless, will say, I'm from East Point, or I'm from Taylor, I'm from Grove Field, something like that.
Well, you touched on something that I found to be very accurate, and I grew up in Warren, and I've worked at Lakeside Mall, and as I go to college, I went to Oakland Commuter School, so I met a ton of people from Shelby Township, Macomb Township, that whole area, and you hit on something interesting, that there's a lot of racism in northern Macomb County. I mean, especially, I think northern Macomb County especially. Could you, elaborate on that? Because some people, nobody ever likes being called a racist, even if they actually are. But I had to tend to agree with you that Macomb County, there's definitely something a little fishy, especially north of M59.
I'm not sure exactly how to explain it. It's just, I think it all ties back to the way things sort of unfolded many, many years ago with the riots and whatnot. The more black people started coming into the metro area, the more people started moving out, the more white people started moving out. And it passes down from generation to generation. It's that sort of mindset that never seems to die, that goes all the way back to centuries ago, that certain people are inferior, they cause problems, or this, or that, and it doesn't go away. How it unfolded in Macomb County, I'm not sure. Maybe it was because, Macomb County is still very affordable, and the people that moved out of Detroit were still looking for, like, an affordable way to live, as opposed to, like, Oakland County, which has, like, Rochester Hills, Birmingham, all these very, very wealthy areas. So maybe that's how it happened. But like I said in the piece, I've talking to several people over the years. Everybody's got like one crazy racist story about Macomb County, and I tried to pull some of that in.
Well, I once had a coworker from Shelby Township call a black coworker, "Hey, Blackie." That's seriously how they greeted them.
Ouch.
And that person seemed completely oblivious as to why calling a black person Blackie could be offensive. So there's a pretty good example of that right there. But just in the economic diversity, you mentioned too with Al Brooks Patterson was a name that you mentioned. Some of the comments he's made about Detroit in the past, recently, and with him being an Oakland County executive in Oakland County, running along the border of Detroit with Ferndale and Royal Oak, two prominent and growing areas. Do you think that kind of division is one of the things that makes this area more unique, not only from an economic standpoint but also from a cultural standpoint?
I think so, because I can't think of another metro area where the politicians don't want to work together. Everybody looks at their central city as being the healthiest part, and therefore whatever happens in the central city affects everything around it. But here, it's just so, like, the borders are so cut and clear that nobody seems to want to work together, and it's just baffling to me.
The one thing that I agreed with you 100% on, Aaron, in this whole thing is about how people from Macomb County love Kid Rock. I grew up in Clinton Township, and nobody knew Kid Rock, but everyone knew someone who knew Kid Rock. Everyone's cousin DJ'd with them in the 80s, or they played basketball with them at the Romeo Y. So I thought that was spot on. But I was talking about how this article is really taken off, and we got to go shortly. But I understand that you almost landed on Let Her Rip because of this piece.
Yeah, I still have the email from the producer. He followed me on Twitter. I followed him back.
he emailed me and said, "Hey, do you want to be on Let It Rip?" And I said, "Sure, I can do that. It'll be fun." Didn't email back for like another 12 or 14 hours or so, and he's just like, "Hey," his exact words were, "We've changed the topic for tonight, and we won't need you, but we might need you for the future." I said, "Okay, that's fine." You know, I wasn't ticked off by it, but then I actually did watch Let It Rip that night because I wanted to know like what was the most pressing topic that
right.
what could be more important than me, right? And it was the same topic.
Yeah.
Charlie Lincoln went out to the airport and asked people like, "Where do you say you're from?" And it was the same thing. And they didn't say anything about Jalopnik about it, which sort of made me mad.
I can see Charlie Langton walking on in. Yo, I don't have a topic for Let It Rip. Let's steal the one from that Foley kid. All right. Well, hey, Aaron, thanks for taking some time with us. Go ahead and get back to your glow sticks or whatever you kids do at Movement. By the way, go to Detroit.jalopnik.com. Read the whole article. It's good stuff. We barely even scratched the surface. And where could people follow you, Aaron, to make sure that they don't miss a single a piece that you write?
I'm on Twitter at Aaron K. Foley. Aaron, letter K, Foley, Foley. All one word. And I tweet nonstop. So.
All right, Aaron, thanks a lot, and we'll be right back. It's the program on tapdetroit.com.